I think that we should come out of this room with a lot of optimism, right? Because we're hearing about all these reforms and preparing for the European Union integration, which is certainly going to address many of the issues we've been talking about for years that might have kept people from putting long-term capital into Ukraine. So I think that, like you said at the very beginning, Secretary, that we have to win this war. We have to get this resolved. I think that there is desire to put private capital. We need the enabling capital now. But I know, even with our own conversations internally in the city, that, and we do have, we do have lines to clients. We do have the ability to keep the business going to a certain extent, and thankfully, because of the different development organizations that can provide some backing in the ECAs, we're going to need that ECA multilateral development money. But I can't emphasize enough that the behavior and the products that they provide are going to have to change in order to mobilize the size of private capital that we need. We need to scale this.
This is my first video update from Nicosia, Cyprus on this Thursday morning. Let's talk about some news, and let's do an update on the Ukraine grain export ban situation, where we have 4, possibly 5 EU member states banning the import of Ukrainian grain into their countries. We're talking about Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Bulgaria, and now possibly Romania, putting a ban on Ukraine exports of grain and other food and agricultural products from being imported into their countries. And I'm going to read you an article from the Financial Times, which gives an update on this situation and explains the possible resolution that the EU has come up with in order to make this fight, this row between 4 or 5 EU member states and Ukraine go away. So here is the Financial Times article. The title is EU Prepares Emergency Curbs on Grain Imports from Ukraine. Bloc bows to pressure from Poland and other Eastern European states over influx of cheap foodstuffs. Brussels is preparing emergency curbs on Ukrainian grain imports to 5 member states close to the war-torn country, bowing to pressure from Poland and Hungary after they took unilateral action to pacify local farmers. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the bloc would take preventative measures as EU officials tried to respond to several countries, including some of Kiev's staunchest allies, breaking ranks to defend their local farmers from an influx of cheap grain. The steps under discussion would bar imports of these products until June into the 4 member states bordering Ukraine plus Bulgaria, except for re-export to other EU member states or parts of the world, said a senior EU official. Von der Leyen said in a letter to the leaders of Poland, Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, and Bulgaria that the steps would immediately counteract the deteriorating situation for their producers of wheat, maize, oilseeds, and sunflower seeds. The highly unusual move is an attempt to regularize a spat of unilateral moves by a group of Eastern European member states which challenge the EU's core powers over trade policy. The countries will receive 100 million euros from EU funds to compensate farmers who have been in uproar. The EU dropped tariffs and quotas on foodstuffs from Ukraine, an agricultural powerhouse, after the full-scale invasion by Russia last year, resulting from fears that the world would go hungry. The regime was intended to last until the coming June. However, much of the Ukrainian grain entering the bloc remained in its neighboring countries and reduced prices locally. The EU wants to extend the wartime trade regime with Ukraine when it expires, but the revised version will have stronger provisions that allow the EU to take measures to safeguard its own market more rapidly in future. Von der Leyen's letter said Brussels will organize convoys of trucks, trains, and barges to transport the grain to ports where it can be sent to countries in need, another official said. It would also increase the capacity of the river Danube. Many commercial traders have refused to pay for this transport because it costs more than traditional seaborne trade through the Black Sea. So what is going on here? Well, the EU, they moved quickly to try and resolve this problem, even handing out 100 million euros to the Eastern European countries that have blocked the import of Ukraine grain, because this entire row, this little spat that we have going on between these 5 EU member states and Ukraine, blew apart the narrative that Russia was blocking Ukraine grain from reaching impoverished countries, and thus Russia was causing these impoverished countries to starve and was causing a food crisis around the world. This narrative completely, this row completely blew apart this Russia is starving the world narrative, because the truth is that Ukraine grain was being dumped in Eastern Europe. It was being dumped there. It was cheap. It didn't have to undergo many of the health checks and regulations that EU farmers have to go through. And it was of poor quality, full of pesticides and chemicals, and it was being dumped in Eastern Europe, and it wasn't reaching these impoverished countries because no one wanted to transit this grain to reach these impoverished countries. And so Eastern Europe and Eastern European markets and the domestic markets and farmers and producers were fed up with this. That is an update with the grain situation, as explained by the Financial Times. We're going to head towards a similar type of conflict or row with the import and the export and the purchasing of Russian oil as well, because we are getting reports that EU member states and G7 nations, they're buying Russian oil above this $60 price cap that the G7 and the EU member states put on Russian oil. And what is happening is that EU member states and G7 countries that signed up to the oil price cap on Russian oil, well, they're buying this oil now from third parties: China, India, Turkey. All of these countries that are purchasing this oil from Russia, they're refining it, they're putting it on Greek ships, Greek, Cypriot, Malta ships, and they're exporting this oil and importing it into the EU and G7 member states. There's some dogs over there that are fighting. Dogs will be dogs. They're going to fight. They're going to do what dogs do sometimes, and they're going to play. They're going to play at times, and at other times they're going to fight. Kind of fits into this narrative, doesn't it? But yeah, so this problem has come up, and the EU member states and the EU member states and the G7 bureaucracies and the powers that be that have put this $60 price cap, they're trying to figure out, what do we do? What do we do? Because our own member states are breaking the rules. Western countries dodging Russian oil ban, according to a report. The EU and G7 have found a loophole to bypass their own restrictions, research has claimed. While the so-called price cap coalition cracked down on crude imports, it has increased purchases of refined products from oil laundering countries, according to a report from the CREA. The EU, Australia, and most of the G7 countries imported a combined $45.9 billion worth of oil products from countries that have become the largest buyers of Russian crude in the 12 months since the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine, the report stated. And this is a report from the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, the CREA. Yep, that is what is happening with oil. So all of the countries that claim that they are putting an end to Putin's war machine and they're starving Putin's war machine of the energy, oil, and gas revenues that it needs to survive, well, that narrative is also complete BS, fiction, because what they're actually doing is they're buying oil that's refined by India and China and Turkey, and I believe I read the UAE as well. And they're buying this refined oil from these providers, and they're putting it on ships. Many of these ships are EU member state ships, and they're purchasing this Russian oil. So if you're in Poland or in the Baltics or wherever you are, Romania, and you're very proud that you're now buying oil or using oil or filling up your car, your tank with oil that is free from Putin's war machine, well, think again. Think again. Anyway, that's what's going on with the oil. And since we're on the subject of Ukraine, we have the Ukraine Deputy Minister of Defense, Miss Anna Mailyar. Anna Mailyar, and she came out with a statement yesterday saying that the big spring offensive has indeed begun. The armed forces of Ukraine are conducting active assault operations in Avdiivka, Artemovsk, which is Bakhmut, the Mariinsky and Limansky directions, which can be considered an element of the counteroffensive, according to Ukraine's deputy defense minister. And I think there's some truth to her claims. Now, is this the full-on, full-scale, big spring counteroffensive that is going to be more devastating than D-Day? No, that's not what we're seeing here. But we are seeing the very, very beginnings of the spring counteroffensive. There are reports that the Zelensky regime is under a lot of pressure, specifically from the UK, to get the spring offensive underway and get it underway now, like ASAP, because according to the UK Defense Ministry, the more that Ukraine delays in getting the spring counteroffensive underway, the more Russia has to dig in and to prepare for the big spring counteroffensive. So the UK is piling on a lot of pressure on the Zelensky regime to get this show on the road. And I believe that we are seeing the very, very, very beginnings of this spring offensive. We have NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg in Kiev. So he's visiting Zelensky, and I imagine he's there to not only pressure Zelensky to get things underway, but to see how things are going, to see how everything is moving along with the spring offensive. So I think that's a signal that we're getting close to the full-scale launch of this spring offensive. We're going to have the NATO countries, the collective West defense ministers and generals and commanders meeting in Germany, I believe, this Friday, and they're going to be meeting to put the final touches on the big spring offensive. And the big topic of discussion is going to be air defense. That is what Ukraine is going to ask for, and that is what the commanders and the generals and defense ministers are going to be discussing in Germany in the Ramstein Air Base this Friday. And they're going to need the air defense because the big problem with this spring counteroffensive, or at least one of the big problems with this spring counteroffensive, is the fact that Russia may be employing their air force to fight, to attack the Ukrainian forces that are going to be moving in the east and south direction of Donbass, as allegedly they make their way to split Russian forces in two. So one of the big problems that Ukraine has is the depletion of their air defenses and the ramping up of Russian Air Force attacks. So they're going to look to solve this. I don't know how quickly they can solve this, but they're going to ask for more air defense missiles on Friday, air defense systems and missiles on Friday. And we have had reports that the first German Patriots have been delivered to Kiev, and they are going to be placed near strategic assets such as military bases, supply depots, and energy infrastructure. So it looks like we have some of these Patriot missiles in place already. On Friday, the Ukraine military is going to ask for more missiles and more air defense systems. We have Stoltenberg in Kiev. We have Zelensky kind of doing a PR tour of the front lines. He was in Avdiivka, allegedly, he was in Avdiivka yesterday, and he's also now at the border of Ukraine and Belarus as well, inspecting things at the border between Ukraine and Belarus at the Volyn region. And we've had video of Zelensky visiting this region as well. And I think everything is just basically pointing to the fact that we are starting to move towards this big spring offensive. Now maybe it'll take 2 weeks or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, who knows? But we're starting to inch closer towards it, and the UK is putting pressure on the Zelensky regime to get things started. And the intel chief, one of the military intel chiefs, this guy that's kind of taken over for Arestovich as the new Baghdad Bob of the Zelensky regime, Alexei Danilov, he said that while Zelensky, the real Zelensky, is in Avdiivka and is on the front lines and is in Volyn at the borders with Belarus, what we saw the other day from Putin visiting Kherson and Lugansk was actually not really Putin, but it was his clone, his doppelganger. That is according to Danilov. He said, no, Putin was there. This is a known thing. There was an ordinary double of which he has more than one. This is already a well-known thing. Says the intel head of a Ukrainian government that uses a green screen for its president to address the nation. Anyway, projection much? He is saying that yesterday what we saw, the video footage from Putin visiting the front lines, was actually Putin's body double, his clone. So that was from the Baghdad Bob of Ukraine, Mr. Alexei Danilov. These guys, man, these guys. Their projection is just off the charts, man, just off the charts. Yesterday there was like this big like light bomb crash that took place outside of Kiev. This big flash of light that took place in Kiev. Did you guys see the footage? It was pretty incredible. I'll put the footage up right now so you can see it. And there was a lot of people asking, what is this? Is this a Russian bomb or a new Russian missile? What is going on? And the Kiev military administration, they came out with a statement saying that according to their preliminary information, this was a NASA satellite falling on the ground. That is what they said. And they put out a bomb alert to notify people that this was some sort of NASA satellite air raid sirens to notify people that this was a NASA satellite because pieces of this satellite were going to be falling to Earth. But then NASA came out and they said that this was not a NASA satellite. So what was this? What was this thing? I have no idea. I have no idea. Kiev Air Forces cannot confirm the information about the satellite at the moment, according to a spokesperson for the Air Forces. So this is a kind of mystery as to what this big flash in the sky, this big crash, and then this mushroom cloud was. But it was interesting to see it. And finally, on the subject, let's take a walk here. On the subject of the spring counteroffensive, I just want to bring up one thing. And that is that I've seen a lot of photos and videos of the reconstruction of Mariupol by the Russian government. And there was a video yesterday of the tram system. Russia is going to be fixing up and operating again the trams of Mariupol, a new tram system. And I was just thinking, Mariupol is the closest big city to Donetsk, and we all remember the fighting that took place in Mariupol, and the Azov style and all of the steelworks and all of that stuff that took place. But Russia is putting in a lot of money into the reconstruction of Mariupol, and the photos and videos that I've seen, things are going really well. I mean, they're really fixing up the city and rebuilding things, and it seems that people are happy, and they're returning to a normal life after everything that took place there. And I was just thinking, I understand that Mariupol is further east, but if this spring counteroffensive is going to do what they claim it's going to do, and it's going to cut the Russian forces in two, and eventually Ukraine's going to move towards Crimea, I imagine the Ukraine military is also going to move towards Mariupol. Why would Russia be investing so much time and money and rebuilding everything and getting people in Mariupol, the citizens of Mariupol, back to a normal life? Why would they be doing this if they felt under threat of this very big and devastating spring counteroffensive that's about to be launched their way? Just a thought. I just thought I would throw that out there. The Zelensky regime, they also want, and this should really be my clown world, but I've got a different clown world. They want $1 billion from energy giant, oil giant Shell. They say that because Shell is selling its assets in Russia and it's moving out of Russia, that it's going to pocket a lot of money. And the Zelensky regime, they want $1 billion. They say it's blood money, and this money should be transferred to Ukraine and to the Zelensky regime. This is like crop circles or something. A strange place here in Cyprus. Got like little crop circles there, a pyramid over there. Where am I? Where am I? Anyway, the Zelensky regime, they want $1 billion. Why not? Why not ask for it? Maybe they won't get $1 billion. Maybe they'll get 500 million or something. Who knows? Maybe Shell is going to have to bow down to the Zelensky regime's requests and virtue signal a bit and give them something. Oh, man. So I imagine Podolyak, Zelensky's BFF and advisor, he went to Zelensky and he said, President Zelensky, I just got some news that Shell is going to be selling their assets in Russia. And, well, they're going to make some good money out of it. What do you think? Oh, Shell, Shell. They do oil and gas and energy, huh? Lot of money in oil and gas and energy. Lot of money, Podolyak. Listen, this is what I want you to do. I want you to call CEO of this shell and you tell them $1 billion. $1 billion. This is what we want. If they don't give this money, then we will say they are Putin propagandists, Putin stooges. $1 billion good. I can buy many, many homes with $1 billion. So yeah, they're going to ask for $1 billion. You watch. Shell will give them something. I don't think it'll be $1 billion, but they'll give them something. Anyway, let's do how many more stories? Let's do a couple more stories and we'll do a quick clown world. How about South Korea? How about South Korea? Their president, he came out with a statement the other day, and he said that South Korea is going to provide weapons to Ukraine. Why not? From Reuters, exclusive. South Korea's Yon opens door for possible military aid to Ukraine. South Korea, yep. Why not? Why not give money to the Zelensky regime? This is according to their president. And then Dmitry Medvedev, well, he came out with a statement after hearing that South Korea is going to start arming the Zelensky regime. And Dmitry Medvedev said, and I quote, "I wonder what the residents of this country will say when they see the latest models of Russian weapons in their closest neighbors, our partners from North Korea." So that's what Medvedev said. And after Medvedev's statement, we then get this statement from Yonhap news agency. Decision on lethal aid to Ukraine depends on Russia per presidential office. South Korea does not supply weapons to Ukraine in order to maintain stable relations with Russia. Quote, "We are not doing this because at the same time that South Korea actively supports the international community for the sake of protecting the freedom of Ukrainian citizens, we must manage relations with Russia in a stable way." Yonhap news agency quoted officials as saying. The statement of the country's president, Yoon Suk, told about possible arms supplies to Kiev in the future was, and I quote, "theoretical and comprehensive," the authorities said. It was theoretical. We're going to send weapons to Ukraine. In theory, we're going to send weapons to Ukraine. Boy, they backtracked really, really quick when Medvedev said, you know what? Two can play at that game. You send weapons to Ukraine, we'll send a couple of I don't know, how about some Iskanders? How about some Iskanders to North Korea? How would you like that, South Korea? And so they backtracked very, very quickly. They walked that one back like in a matter of hours. So let's talk about Egypt. And by the way, South Korea will find, or the U.S. will work with South Korea to find other ways to get weapons to Ukraine, like what they did a week ago with the ammunition that South Korea sold to the United States or gave to the United States, and then the United States passed that along to Ukraine. So they'll find ways to work around it. But South Korean weapons directly to Ukraine, well, if they do that, then Russia has an answer to that. So let's do one more story, and then we'll do a clown world. This is going to be a quick story. The Washington Post. Egypt nearly supplied rockets to Russia, agreed to arm Ukraine instead, leaks show. The Discord leaks. Egypt made detailed plans to export rockets at Moscow's request. But after a diplomatic offensive from Washington, later approved artillery production for Kiev. That's right. That is right. So, Sisi and Egypt, they were planning to send weapons to Russia against American interests and American requests. they were going to arm, to supply the Putin war machine with weapons. But the amazing, competent, incredible diplomacy of Joe Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son, and Anthony Blinken and the State Department, they got wind of this Egyptian plot, and they called up Sisi and they said, "Not so fast, Sisi. What are you doing? We know exactly what you're up to, and here's the offer we're going to make you. You're going to make weapons for Ukraine, and you're not going to send weapons to Russia. Got it?" And Sisi and the Egyptians, they said, "Damn, that Biden and that Blinken, they're good. They're really, really good. They are top-level chess master diplomats." And so that's just how Biden rolls, you know? He is a foreign policy guru, a master of foreign policy. And he got wind of what Egypt was trying to do, according to the document leaks, and he just judo moved the Egyptians. He did a judo tactic on the Egyptians, and he turned the tables around. And instead of Egypt supplying weapons to Russia, they're now supplying weapons to Kiev. That, my friends, is that is top-level diplomacy right there from the Biden White House. Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff from Joe Bidenopoulos. And now we know why he got 81 million votes during the last elections, and why he is going to trounce on the competition this 2024, because he's Joe Bidenopoulos, master of foreign policy. Oh man. I'm just playing, everybody. I'm joking. The story is real. The story is real from the Washington Post. The rest of what I said, well, let's do a clown world. Let's do a clown world. Let's talk about vodka. Let's talk about vodka. And from Sweden, no more Absolut. From Sweden to Russia. Swedish producer of the vodka Absolut is going to stop supplying Russia. Russia will be left without vodka from Sweden. That is what's going to happen. From Visegrad 24, which is super pro Zelensky, they said Absolut Vodka announces it will abandon the plan to return to the Russian market. CEO Duran says the reactions in Sweden, where it's produced, were too massive for the company not to notice. Swedish farmers had threatened to stop selling grain to the company. And so there you have it. Russia will be left without Absolut vodka, without vodka from Sweden. And this is a product that, in my opinion, Russia will be unable to find a substitute for. It's going to be impossible for Russians, the Russian market, to find a substitute for vodka from Sweden. It's just not going to happen. So it looks like if you're in Russia at the moment, if you're living in Russia, you better buy up whatever bottles of vodka remain in the liquor stores and hoard them, buy them up, because pretty soon you're not going to have any more vodka in Russia. Where is Russia going to find vodka? Where? You know, I can't think of where Russia's gonna be able to get vodka once Absolut completely pulls out of the market or decides to not re-enter the market. Where's Russia going to get vodka? I don't know. This is a big problem. This may be the move that puts people onto the streets and overthrows the Putin government. this may be it. This ban of Absolut vodka to Russia, this may be the one that that leads to regime change in Russia. We're going to have to wait and see. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Rockfin, and Telegram. Go to the Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code GOODDAY. Take care. And so now let me choose the winner of the Duran Shop Instagram giveaway. We have a page on Instagram which is dedicated just to the Duran Shop. This is my lightweight hoodie. It's my Duran t-shirt, my Duran backpack, and I'm just going to scroll through the comments, and where my finger lands will be the person that has won this contest and will get some Duran Shop merch. So let's count to 3. 1, 2, and 3. And the winner is Tetya DKB. Tetya DKB, please send us a DM. You're the winner. Congratulations.